Today on the Tinkering Geek, I want to show off another one of my little side projects. My Northern Alberta Railway collection. Okay, so just a little brief background on why this collection's important to me. I have actually worked as a conductor on what is, well, it's now CN, but what was part of the Northern Alberta Railway. For those that aren't aware, the Northern Alberta Railway was a local operator owned, well, it was originally a conglomerate put together by the Alberta government of a number of regional railroads that then was a partnership between CN and CP. And then eventually it was sold off, and I think most of the lines now are CN. So I might do a video in the future, give a little bit more history and backstory to the Northern Alberta Railway, especially as it exists kind of in my area. But having actually worked on the line where some of this stuff would have occurred, it has a certain significance to me that really no other railroad does. So starting with this locomotive, this is the NAR number 73. It's a Bachmann Spectrum that I found on eBay. I was lucky enough somebody else had deckled it up and decorated it for me. It's Baldwin 280, and it's not 100% prototypical to the number 73 that actually ran on the Northern Alberta Railway, but it's the closest one I have anyway. Hopefully Rapido will come out with its CN 460. Which they have one that actually ran up in this area. It's one that the Alberta Railway Museum actually has. That one would be spot on. So if you haven't expressed interest in that, please do. Let's get Rapido to make it. So having a look at what else I've got. This one here, one of the first models I actually completed kind of for this project. This is a fairly accurate representation of the water tower that was in Lac-La-Biche, Alberta. There were several around the NAR that were similar to this, and lucky for me, it's pretty much a stock Walthers kit. There wasn't an awful lot of things I had to do to kind of really get it dialed and make it perfect. It's also a bit of a conglomeration. So one of the main differences is the style of the roof. The Walthers kit comes with a domed one. The one that was actually here and the other ones that the Northern Alberta Railway used were peaked. So I made that modification. It is also a little bit of a combination because from the pictures I found, I'm kind of assuming a few things here, but it had this level gauge at one point, and this might actually be a little high. And then it also had a side gauge. From the photos, it looks like this gauge on top was older, so it was there when it was originally built. This gauge wasn't added until later, at which point this was actually removed. So having both on it's a little bit of a stretch, but yeah. Had to add this the spout, which works as much as you can on an HO scale model. Does go up and down. That was a little interesting to try to fit through, but yeah, there's actually a really interesting photo of this with a train stopped by it, and I was kind of looking to recreate that. Not quite there yet. I've got to actually put together some cars and stuff like that to put together that photo, but at some point I'll share that with everybody in the future. Set that off to the side. So this was another eBay find. I believe this started life, or is, a Campbell scale models kit. It had this corrugated metal roof added to it, but also in MacLeod. Uh-oh, looks like I bent one of the lights at some point. That might have happened in shipping. I can't remember. In MacLeod, there was a United Grain Growers elevator at one point. There were actually 2 elevators, and I'll find it later. But I have 2 kits to recreate the 2 elevators that were in town. So this was, as I said, another lucky find. It was already assembled, and if I remember correctly, it wasn't even that bad a price. Yeah, so here's the other Campbell's kit. Be able to put that together, be the second grain elevator that was in MacLeod. So when the railway kind of started up here, one of the main functions was for logging. J.D. MacArthur, who originally started what was originally the Alberta Great Waterways. I'll put a comment if I got that wrong, but I think I got that right. He was a lumber baron, so his primary thing was he wanted access to the lumber resources. So to that end, I picked up a number of these really actually quite fantastic Bachmann cars. These things are not all that cheap, but Bachmann tends to generally be one of the more affordable, but these are actually really nicely detailed cars. Which one? Any of these kind of, no. Take one of these out here. But they're a nice little lumber car that's fairly early and therefore appropriate to what would have been up here. It might not be exact. I'm sure there's somebody that knows far more about the Northern Alberta than I do, and is probably going to tell me how wrong I am, but these are probably very similar, if not identical, to what was used. They also come with these, I think they're resin, but they're amazingly convincing little logs. Also, considering how far north this line went, it is mostly pines up here. Comes with these little cribbing pieces. I get the logs, and I'm not going to put it all together, but should give you kind of an idea. So they're a nice, definitely a large departure from my usual modern stuff. All of this is, in case you couldn't already tell. Well, that's a complete mess, so I'll put that back together on camera, off camera now. I also got this one, which is a little larger. It's got, you know, crate and a steam winch. So those are kind of for some of the early logging stuff. I was originally doing this to be part of like a Heritage Day celebration for the 100 years of the railway. I didn't get everything finished I wanted to, as usually the case, but I did have those and the locomotive to kind of show off. Also picked up this CP flat car. It's another kind of earlier one. It says built 1917. So yeah, that would be actually about right. This is one of the other locomotives I picked up. It's not exactly right. I don't think these ever actually were up here, but this would be very similar. Oops. Uh-oh. Drawbar malfunction there. This would be very similar to the earlier locomotives. Very small boilers on them. So it kind of gives the right scale and impression of the type of locomotives. There might have actually been some up here, considering that there were periods where there was definitely borrowed power and things like that from the two parent railways, CN and CP. Most of what I've read, it looks like it was largely CP stuff, but there was definitely some CN stuff as well. So that's not quite 100%, but especially when you're trying to get a collection together in a hurry, that was a reasonable facsimile. So I also got just a collection of some earlier box cars. These might not be 100%. I'm still doing a fair amount of research. It's definitely out of my depth going this early. CBQ. That's a lot of the rolling stock that I've seen in the pictures was either Northern Alberta's themselves, and they didn't have a huge fleet, or CN and CP stuff. So there was definitely would have been some American stuff coming up here, I'm sure, but not all that much. So I got some undecorated stock cars. There's another kind of interesting story with the railway where they were actually bringing buffalo from way up north, up near Fort McMurray, to the States to help repopulate the decimated buffalo populations down there. I also got this little box car here. Once again, undecorated, something that I can kind of make work as something similar to the right era. I didn't have a lot of like really early 1900s rolling stock before this. So another locomotive I have, it's this little steam engine I got from Trains and Such. It's a little saddle tank steam engine, which is very close to the A&GW's locomotive number 1. So that one might not have even run up here. From what I've read, it mostly stayed in the Dunvegan yards near Edmonton, but this just so closely matches a nice little engine that was one of the earlier locomotives for the Alberta and Great Waterways, that I just couldn't pass it up. Once again, not exact, but it's a reasonable facsimile. It would give people an idea anyway of the type of locomotive that was used. So this was another one I picked up, when I was originally trying to gather this. I was doing it in such a short period of time. It was kind of a scattershot approach. This, I think, is a little large for anything that would have run up here, or at least early on. It's actually not far off. Is that? Yeah, I guess that would be another consolidated. If I can get it out. Have a look, though. It is a little beefier. Just a bit. So this was something I picked up. I'd have to do a little bit more research to see if I could make this into a reasonable facsimile of what there was up here. But, another shot at kind of giving an impression of the types of locomotives that operated on the line. I'm sure other people that do short line modeling have the similar problem. It's really hard, especially without going into brass and stuff like that, to find exact prototypes of what were on some of these smaller railroads, especially in steam, since almost every locomotive was at least a little bit different. So this was another, I'd say, one of my lucky finds. I believe this was from Supertrain in Calgary. And it is a True Lines train deckled as a Northern Alberta Railway's caboose. Definitely one of the highlights of my collection, because as I said, like pretty much this and this are some of the only ones that are really close to being correct. And actually I think these are the only two I have right now that are actually lettered for Northern Alberta Railways. So another one of my little gems. Moving on, these I think I actually got at the Great Edmonton Train Show So these are actually, these are kits, and they are going to definitely need some assembly. It's all wrapped in tissue, but these are definitely like a put it everything together kit. But these are actually NAR prototype. So these are Fowler stock cars, NAR number 4 brace end. So they're from Westerfield, which I'm pretty sure they're still around. It's kind of neat to get something that, as I said, it's hard to find actual models of the prototype when you're looking at something so specialized and regional. So I've got some little line side buildings as well. These are just kind of a generic thing. Canna models, which seem to have disappeared, which is way too bad, because I'd really love to find one of their coaling towers, because their coaling tower is exactly what was in MacLeod. So if anybody has a coaling tower for a reasonable price, feel free to contact me. So we're getting into, once again, as I said, a bit of a scattershot approach. I picked up a number of roughly era-appropriate cars. This is a Southern. Let's see what else I've got in here. Oh, these are some more Southerns. Yeah. Or that's a Pullman. This one's lettered for Southern as well. So the plan was to eventually repaint these in Northern Alberta Railways, which will be blue. I'd have to have a look. If I remember correctly, these are close. If not exact, they're close. So at least until I can find something better, that's what's I got. So picked up a little Sylvan Scale Models pickup truck. Once again, it's the exact date of the module I'm trying to make, or the diorama I'm trying to make. It's a little hit and miss, because different time periods or different buildings and things like that. But I wanted something a little earlier than the modern stuff I have. So this isn't quite, you know, like 1920s. Which is kind of where I'm aiming, 1920s, early 30s. But yeah, it's a little bit of an earlier vehicle. A couple of other, I think I picked these up at train show, I don't even remember. These are Walther's passenger car kits. Once again, fairly era appropriate, if not exact prototypes of what ran on the NAR. But I might see, especially being kits, I might be able to kind of kit bash them to make them what I need them to be. They are Pullman 80 foot. It says less trucks, so great, I'm going to have to find trucks too. So I got this little kit too. I think I picked up a train show as well. This will represent, in a lot of the photos kind of around the station, there was a water tower similar to this. I have a feeling it was just for town water, possibly for one of the businesses. There was a cattle yard too, so possibly for that. But yeah, that's about the right style. So I picked that up. Might be a nice little thing I can add. May or may not get used. Let's be honest, this whole project's kind of a bit of a, you know, hopefully it'll happen someday. Oh, and we'll pull out, actually I should probably move one of my like all-time favorite locomotives before the internet sees me cry. And then in here I've just got a bunch of loose cars, once again of a kind of appropriate era. Earlier Gons. Some earlier boxcars. This one's kind of interesting because this is an older kit too. It looks like it's a combination of metal and wood. CP stock car. There's pictures of similar things. As I said, I'm sure the experts will go, yeah, the ends were different, or the handbrake was in the wrong place. I'm sure, but close enough, especially for the lay person. If I'm using this to try to educate people about the railway history of the area, most people aren't going to tell the difference. And giving them the general impression is probably good enough because they're not going to remember the details. So this is a reefer car. There was actually commercial fishing in the Lac-La-Biche area that was shipped down to Edmonton by rail. There was an ice house up here, so there's a couple of reefers there. That one's a Canadian Northern, which is also kind of cool. So yeah, that's kind of the rolling stock. Got a couple other things to show you. Set that in there gingerly. So let me show you some of my research material. These are just some really kind of cool things. So we'll actually kind of start in reverse order to what I have it. This book here, Ribbons of Steel. If you are looking for information on Northern Alberta Railways, is out there, can find it on eBay and things like that, and it's got some really great information. And that's for all the lines heading north out of Edmonton. Yeah, excellent resource. This one, however, is my absolute favorite. The dust cover is dusty. So this one, north from Edmonton, the Northern Alberta Railways, is just probably one of the best resources, especially for modeling like I'm trying to do. So one of the things, let's see if I can just find one. So there's color, actually this is a perfect page. So we have, and I just lost a leaf out of it. It has color photos, and one of the best parts is it's actually got track plans, track diagrams, which are hugely useful for developing a model railroad. These can also be found around the internet. Excellent resource if you're interested in the Northern Alberta Railway. So this was something else that I came across at train show, and I was just absolutely floored to be able to find it. So this is from 2014, and one of the best things is it's got a color photograph on the cover of the Lac-La-Biche station in the boxcar red that it originally was. There's a whole bunch of pictures out there later on. The Northern Alberta Railway painted it like a blue and white, but when it was originally built, that's what it looked like. There are actually some modifications. This is not exactly as built. Interesting thing you learn over time is there's all kinds of modifications made to the building. It's different station masters and different uses kind of take it over. Things like that window weren't there originally. I think that was used for clothesline. So one of the other excellent resources that some of these can be found easily, some of these not so much. There is Colin K. Hatcher, the Northern Alberta Railway, and there's 3 volumes to this. So this has a whole bunch of black and white photos. One of the other really useful things is in the back he actually has rosters, which is just a really, really excellent resource. Volumes 1 and 2 seem to be relatively common. Volume 3 is a little harder to come by, or at least I found it to be. I actually managed to stumble across it at train show and just snapped it up because, yeah, any resource you can find. Oh, look at that. Stumbled across right there. We have the photo of the little saddleback tank car, or saddleback locomotive, sorry. So yeah, great resource. fantastic books. So last but not least, I have a model that I've been working on now for quite some time. It is a model of the Locomotive station, which I am scratch building, trying to do it out of dimensional lumber. I have made some mistakes. One of the first things is that I am not a framer. I am not a carpenter. I am not an expert at building houses or buildings of any kind. So when trying to tackle this, you know, you look up pictures of framing and things like that, and you kind of figure it out. I had a vague idea of how it's done, and away I went. Found that working with the blueprints, things were a little funky. Came to find out that the platform framing that they do now, so you know, you build a floor and then you do the framing, and then if there's a second floor, you build the second floor. That is not how they built buildings. And I'm sure there's somebody out there, you know, going, oh, of course not. You didn't know that? Didn't have a clue. So what they used to call it was balloon framing. Completely different type of framing. If you're interested, just Google balloon framing. And that's how this would have been originally built. So I actually started with the footprint on like a platform framing, which is wrong. And then I'm kind of trying to correct it with balloon framing, but it's, yeah, a little hard to do, and I didn't really want to start over. But as I might have mentioned before, that's one of the things I really like about doing scale modeling, is you learn these little strange factoids that I never would have known in a million years otherwise. And I had no idea that there were actually different types of framing. So there's the other wall. Whoa. That would have been awesome to catch on camera. Scale wood building exploding. So that's the other side wall. I haven't cut out any of the doors or windows yet. Kind of gives you an idea. Ran out of lumber, recently got some more. Haven't had a chance to work on it since. This here was just a foam board mock-up that I made. Made sure I kind of had the right dimensions to make sure it looked right. Luckily, there were blueprints, which I then drafted in CAD at one of the regional museums. So it was really awesome to be able to get actual plans of the station I was trying to build, and very, very helpful. Models have been made of this in the past, but none of it as it was built. And you know, I hate to criticize anybody else's work, but there were some minor inaccuracies in some of them. So this is my attempt. I'm sure there will also be inaccuracies, and I'm sure somebody else can point those out to me later. It's how it goes. So hopefully you liked this look at my Northern Alberta Railway collection. As I've kind of alluded to, I don't know if I've actually said, I'm hoping eventually to make this into kind of a diorama or display piece that I can use to kind of help educate people on some Northern Alberta Railway history. So that's kind of a work in progress, not a top priority, unfortunately, but I'm hoping to finish a few things like the station. So if you like this video, please hit that thumbs up and give it a like. Get subscribed, hit that bell icon. You can also follow me on Instagram as well as Twitter. And I've got a little bit more information on my website at tinkeringgeek.com as well. Until next time, keep tinkering.